So, welcome to this 72nd episode of A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Last time, we finished this long footnote that was on page 233 and 234, where HPB compares the seven Fohatic brothers, the brothers Fohat, who work with the form aspect, compares that seven with the seven Ray Lords, who work with the consciousness aspect. There's some interesting stuff in those quotes. Then after a discussion on the anima mundi, which DK tells us is, quote, fecundated by the primordial ray of intelligence, we learn that this ray is itself the vehicle for the divine ray of love wisdom. This is a great way to see the way these two rays are connected, which is that the third ray, or the primordial ray, it's primordial because it was developed first in the previous solar system, is in this solar system the vehicle for the ray of consciousness. So you have the indweller who develops its consciousness within the vehicle that's ruled by the primordial ray. And that the merging of these two rays is the goal of evolution. So one brings the vibration of the primordial ray up to the level so that it can be dissolved and subsumed in the consciousness ray, and then one moves up to the next level, the next form level. DK then lists the seven sacred logoi, who together make up the divine second ray. So the point here is that these are like subrays of the divine ray, or a sevenfold expression of love wisdom. Next, we learned that men, the monad, the units of consciousness, that these three are actually three perspectives on the same reality, and that they, quote, in their totality make up the bodies of the seven heavenly men. HPB then describes the two primary functions of the Deva kingdom, which are, first of all, builders, those intelligent forces that construct the forms that make up the body of the logos. And second, that's the third aspect quality. And then the way that these Devas interface with the second aspect is that they are the bestowers of consciousness, the mediators who awaken and sustain the principle of mind in humanity. And that's how we move from individualization over millions of years up to and through the fourth initiation under the influence of this group of Devas. We then took a look at the Deva Lords of the Plains, who are both the ensouling intelligences and the governors of the substance of each plane. We also looked at the lesser Devas, who form the three aspects of the lower kingdom in nature. This is a unique perspective. We normally think of the spirit aspect, the life aspect, as being at monadic levels, and the second logos, the life of the consciousness aspect, to be at soul levels, and then the form aspect in the lower quaternary. But here we learn that even within the realm of the third aspect, that there's this subdivision, right? So that you have the life of the third logos, which is the third aspect, form the atoms of matter, and that the second logos is that cohesive quality that groups atoms into forms. This is true in all the lower kingdoms. And that the life of the first logos, the life aspect itself, forms the indweller, even in these lesser forms. So it's interesting to see how these three aspects are ever present, at every level, not just stratified at monadic soul and personality levels. Uh, do, 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 do. Yeah, we then take a look at uh, the nature of the planetary elemental, which DK here calls the spirit of a planet, not to be confused with the indwelling uh, being who is the cosmic lord who uses the planet as his body. This is more of an elemental, synthetic life who unifies the myriads of devas that constitute the forms within the lower three kingdoms, as well as the human kingdom, all the manifested kingdoms. Through these lesser lives, the planetary elemental provides the field of experience for the evolutionary lives, human and superhuman. Um, in other words, through these lesser lives, we're able to experience this environment that we find ourselves in, right? And through this experience, we're able to unfold our consciousness within the domain of the planetary elemental. And this pretty much takes us up to where we left off last time. So, having finished the footnote, we'll continue exploring question 2 in the main text. What is evolution and how does it proceed? So, could I get a reader, please?
Barbara, are you going to read?
Yes. 3, the manifesting units of consciousness. If these stated aims are carefully considered, it will be seen how each has its place within the plan, and how evolution is but a term used to express the gradual development in time and space of the inherent capacity of a human being, of a heavenly man, and of the great man of the heavens. The place and position of one and all to each other must be borne in mind, for no one can develop without the other. What therefore have we? A. The Son, the grand man of the heavens, he manifests through the sun and the 7 sacred planets, each of whom embodies one of his 7 principles, just as he, in his totality, embodies one of the principles of a greater cosmic entity. B. A heavenly man. He manifests through a planet and embodies one of the principles of the sun, the Logos. He himself is likewise developing through 7 principles, which are the source of his essential unity with all other heavenly men. Cosmically considered, the sun is developing the principle of a greater cosmic being, that principle which we call love wisdom.
So you've probably guessed that C here will be a human being. So he's always considering these in triple form, right? This whole section of the Treatise on Cosmic Fire compares and contrasts these 3 levels, right? Solar logos, the planetary logos, and humanity. Okay, so first, 3, the manifesting units of consciousness. If these stated aims are carefully considered, it will be seen how each has its place within the plan and how evolution is but a term used to express the gradual development in time and space of the inherent capacity of a human being, of a heavenly man, and of the grand man of the heavens. So manifesting units of consciousness are nested centers, kind of like Russian dolls, right? Of individual planetary and solar lives, each unfolding the same inherent capacities, but on progressively higher levels. And we'll go into this more in the next passage here. The place and position of one and all to each other must be borne in mind, for no one can develop without the other. So complete interpenetration and interrelationship, right? The evolution of a human monad, a planetary logos, and a solar logos are inseparably linked, intertwined. Each is a cell in a greater body, and the growth of one depends on and contributes to the growth of the others. Evolution is relational, a cooperative unfolding of the one life through its many parts. For example, the growth and consciousness of a planetary logos is dependent on both the growth of a solar logos, in whose body he forms a center, as well as on the growth and consciousness of the human and deva units, which forms centers in his own body. Right. Next, what therefore have we? A, the sun, the grand man of the heavens. He manifests through the sun and the seven sacred planets, each of whom embodies one of his seven principles, just as he, in his totality, embodies one of the principles of a greater cosmic entity. So this statement emphasizes the as above, so below correspondence between one, the solar logos, and that greater logos of which our solar logos is a part. It's actually 7 solar systems. And 2, the planetary logoi and the solar logos, of which each planetary logos forms a part. Note that the grand man of the heavens is the SON, sun, the indweller, not the physical solar system, right? So this is all being described from the point of view of consciousness. The 7 principles of the solar logos, represented by the 7 sacred planets, inform the 7 modes of divine consciousness, from the head center, representing pure will, down to the root chakra, which makes physical embodiment possible. At this point in time, it's fascinating detail that we ran into a few pages back, which is that Earth, Mars, and Mercury, that is to say, the Earth, Mars, and Mercury globes within the Earth chain, which is the chain we're now in, obviously on the Earth globe of that, together form the root chakra of the solar logos, which suggests that it is through that energy that embodiment became possible. You could say that we're the anchor thrown overboard to anchor the ship, right? So that manifestation into the dense physical could actually happen. Our little planet Earth and its 2 adjacent globes on this chain actually represent that ability for the solar logos. Okay, next, a heavenly man. He manifests through a planet and embodies one of the principles of the sun, the logos. Again, we have the SON, sun, right? He himself is likewise developing through 7 principles, which are the source of his essential unity with all other heavenly men. Notice how this is also written from the point of view of the SON, the indweller. So we have 1, Logos, of which our solar system is a part, 2, the solar system itself, and 3, a planetary Logos, all of which demonstrate through 7 principles and are each themselves a principle in the next higher being that they form a part of. We also here learned that for a planetary Logos, it is this participation as one of 7 principles of the solar Logos that unites him with his fellow planetary Logoi, right? So identification with the other planetary Logoi comes through the fact that a planet recognizes his brother planets in consciousness, recognizes their participation in the body of the solar Logos. Next, cosmically considered, the sun is developing the principle of a greater cosmic being, that principle which we call love wisdom. So the SON, sun, our solar Logos, is the heart center of the Logos of the 7 solar systems of which our system is a part. It is this role that so closely ties him to Sirius, which is the great super constellation of the 2nd principle. All right. Okay, I want to invite you to participate. Anytime you have a question or any thoughts about any of the material, just raise your hand and we can start a dialogue. Always more interesting, right? Okay, until that point, let's go ahead. Can we get a reader for this shorter section?
Carol, you want to read?
That is the fundamental characteristic he has to develop during his life cycle. Each heavenly man therefore embodies predominantly a subsidiary principle of the fundamental one. In like manner, he himself has 6 subsidiary principles as he has the sun. C. A human being, man, he manifests on the physical plane through form, and has also 7 principles in each life cycle he works at their development. He likewise has his primary coloring, dependent upon the fundamental principle embodied by the heavenly man, who is his originating source.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, first, that is the fundamental characteristic he has to develop during his life cycle. Each heavenly man, therefore, embodies predominantly a subsidiary principle of the fundamental one. In like manner, he himself has 6 subsidiary principles, as has the sun. Okay, so each heavenly man embodies one subsidiary principle of the solar logoic fundamental principle of love wisdom. At least in our solar system, that fundamental principle is love wisdom. So this is where you get the idea of them being like subrays of the 2nd rays. But that's the only you could say flavor of that ray that we know in this solar system is, for instance, the first ray of will and power is actually the subray of the 2nd ray. So we know it through that overall coloration, right? We have no idea of the energy of pure will and power, which almost certainly exists in some other solar system, right? But not in this one. And, by the way, will exist as the fundamental ray in the next of solar incarnation of our solar Logos. Okay, so at the same time, each sacred planet also has 6 subsidiary principles, probably embodied, DK doesn't say, but they're probably embodied by that planet's 7 chains. Because remember, when we say planet or uh, heavenly man, we're talking about the entire scheme. All the planets, um, all the chains, all the globes. So you have to think in terms of this bigger demonstration of the planetary energy, right? I'll get to you in a second, Adele. Just going to finish my thoughts and then we'll get to your question. So one of these chains, of the 7 chains, in particular embodies the same principle as the planetary logos is principally expressing. So like our Earth at this point is, because it's not a sacred planet, it's expressing the 3rd ray. So there will be one of the chains that is particularly expressive of the 3rd ray. So that is especially aligned with the overall purpose of the planet. This fractal quality of the principles is shown in this chart. As just stated, each planetary chain represents a principle in a planetary scheme. Each planetary scheme, a principle in a solar system. Each solar system, a principle in a group of 7 solar systems. Each of these larger groups, 7-fold groups, forms a principle in a greater constellation. And finally, each of these greater constellations represents a principle in the one about whom not may be said. So we have this sort of breathtaking extension of this idea of the septenary principles. It works at every level. And of course, it works below this level of the chains as well. Okay, let's go for questions. Nadell.
It appears as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the 7 principles that the solar logos is developing are the 7 ray qualities.
They are the 7 ray qualities in association with their effect on the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. So it's really the interrelation of those ray energies with the quality demonstrated by each phohatic brother, for lack of a better term, right, who forms the material quality of each plane, right, of each subplane of the cosmic physical plane. So it's really their interaction that forms the principles. You also can see this in terms of the centers, from the head center, just like in a human being, down to the base of the spine, which are, for a solar logos, planetary logoi. And we know that those planetary logoi are ray lords. You see the interweaving of the, in that case, the physical etheric, which are the centers, and the expression of the ray lords. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Go ahead if you have more thoughts on it.
Well, it seems as though the principles are being developed through the sacred planets.
For our solar logos.
For our solar logos, yes.
That's right.
And since the Earth is not a sacred planet, and you said that it's developing the 3rd ray principle, I'm not sure how that is like the Earth sort of a subset of the sacred planet of the 3rd ray or something like that?
When I said that, I was talking about the development of the consciousness of the Earth logos itself, not in relation to the solar logos. It would seem that the Earth's position in relation to the solar logos is what I was describing when I said that the three globes of the Earth chain, which are Mercury, Earth, and Mars, represent the root chakra. So it's developing or has successfully developed, materialized the the root chakra of the solar logos. Now, there's a real important caveat here. It's my opinion, and DK doesn't talk about this, that this is a movable feast, that at another point in the life cycle of the solar logos, there will be another planet, more appropriate to whatever future time, that would represent that root chakra. This is a temporary holding of that energy.
Okay, I sort of got it. I think as best I'm going to.
Okay. Yeah, if you could think of a question that would help you clarify, let me know. I'll see if I can address it. Carol,
I think I'm stuck on similar stuff, but my main question just was what
oops, you're fading out. Carol, you got to be real close to your mic.
Okay, sorry. My voice is rusty today too. So it sounds like you said the next chain of the
You're
planetary
fading out. Sorry, I don't know what you have to do.
Okay, I'll do my best. So the next
Go ahead.
the next chain of the planetary logos, you were saying that it would be about Ray, which Ray?
Well, I didn't say, but in fact, the next chain will be the Mercury chain, and uh, uh, instead of an expression of the fourth globe, which at this point is an expression of the third ray, it will be an expression of since it will be the Mercury globe, will be an expression of the fifth ray, right? Um, but we'll be going through all kinds of humanity will be going through all kinds of transformative processes before that time, because we still have on this globe um, the sixth and seventh subraces, which will, in the sixth subrace of the Aryan root race, um, we will gain contact with higher mind, which will be a game changer. That's when the restoration of the plan will take place, because we'll have a direct line to the soul consciousness and to that second principle. And that's just, in the next root race. So we can't even imagine what life for a human being will be like on the Mercury globe. But from a planetary perspective, that globe will represent the influence of the fifth ray on the consciousness of the planetary logos.
Thank you.
You bet. Feel free with follow-up questions. Sometimes I go off on a slight tangent and maybe I missed the main point of your question. So yeah, jump in, and I could talk about this stuff all day long. So I'm looking at Ben Stock. He has a comment here. He says, the grand man in his totality embodies one of the principles of a greater cosmic entity. Okay, he's riffing off of that. He says, a recent survey of the rotational direction of hundreds of galaxies seems to indicate that the entire universe we know is located within a black hole in something greater. You're trying to blow my mind, right, Ben? Yeah, that's extraordinary. So
Yeah.
it's just stretched the limit, right? So the known universe, which like the James Webb, uh, you know, telescope that's a million miles out is mapping, and is I think it's now up to 300 billion um, galaxies, I believe, that it has mapped. So all of that it is mapping is our known universe, which uh, you know, is the highest version of the grand man, right? And what's being suggested here is that it's uh, located, I don't know what that means, within a black hole in something greater. I really wonder, I'd like to know more about this, the physics of what they see happening in this universe that makes them think that it is being influenced by some kind of super cosmic black hole.
Well, uh, current astrophysics would require that the rotation of galaxies be equally balanced between clockwise and counterclockwise galaxies. And it's not 50-50. And that seems to indicate that we're sort of sucked into a black hole of something else.
Suggesting, in order to make the parallel with lesser black holes, they must have observed activity of stars approaching black holes that demonstrate a similar kind of polarity or unbalanced polarity, like I don't know how to expand on it from there, but there must be a parallel, that they're drawing on in order to make this extraordinary assumption or hypothesis, I should say. But very interesting. So, see, the thing about this idea, I mean, can't spend too much time on it, but the idea of multiverses is that, you take more or less the shape of our universe and it's septillion stars, which is 10 to the 24th power of stars that are, suggested are in our universe, and that there's just another one like that somewhere so far away that there's no way of having any experience of it, and that there could be trillions of those universes, right? So there's that idea. But this is different. This suggests an uber universe, right, that has a black hole that contains our entire little universe. All right. So yeah, extraordinary idea. Thank you. Yeah, it's terrific to keep pace with and astronomical discoveries, especially with James Webb in full tilt function. And not just, I'm going to be mentioning another recent discovery in just a little bit. Okay, so I hope you have a grasp of this. It's important and it's fundamental. The overall idea is the septenary nature of manifestation, right? That you have the one, which at whatever level acts as the source that then demonstrates sevenfold, right? And that links us all the way up. And of course, there are literally untold steps between this level and the entire universe, right? Because who knows how galaxies are grouped. I mean, it just stands to reason. This 7 constellations forming one about whom not may be said is just part of our galaxy, a rather small part of our galaxy, this galaxy we're in called the Milky Way, right? But how many uh, groupings are there before you even get to the galaxy level? We don't know, you know. Um, we just don't know uh, the component parts because DK doesn't know either, right? You know, being a mere quote unquote master of wisdom on the earth doesn't reveal anything beyond the one about whom God may be said. At least he's not telling if it has been revealed, right? But we can assume, I mean, what he's telling us here, because this system also goes down this way, you know, planetary change to globes, to root races, to sub races, you know, to kingdoms and nature, all the way down this direction as well. So we know that it does extend upwards. It doesn't, the system doesn't end. It's just our ability to know the components of that system that ends, right? But at some point you reach a galaxy level, and then we know that there are 7 galaxies, it would hold logically, that make up some uh, unit of consciousness, some great logos who is represented physically by those 7 galaxies. And there are uh, uh, charted so far by the telescope James Webb 300 billion galaxies, right? So that's just for starters. So, you know, it's an almost infinite vertical level, you know, as well as the truly seemingly infinite horizontal demonstration of all those levels. Anyway, enough. It's a great topic. So coming back just to the planets within our solar system, let's take a look at MDR's thoughts on how the planets represent solar logoid principles. Michael really did some deep study. You know, he was an esoteric astrologer of the first water. And so what he says here is not just off of the cuff. It represents, you know, a lifetime of studying. So could we get a reader for this?
Janet, are you there?
Yes.
Cool.
If we wish to consider the planetary logi, which would reasonably be related to the principles of the solar logos, the following tabulation could be considered suggestive. Justification of all these assignments have been worked out rationally and could be debated at length. Note that quite a number of principles are listed. Usually not all of these will be found in one enumeration, although most enumerations are limited to 7 principles. Atma, Vulcan, Saturn, Uranus, Buddhi, Neptune, Jupiter, Mercury, Higher Manas, Venus with a little Uranus, Saturn, egoic body, Jupiter, Venus with aspects of Mercury, personality, sun veiling an undiscovered non-sacred planet, lower concrete mind, Mercury, Mars, Earth, Saturn, maybe Venus, Uranus in its lower aspect, and one should not forget Pluto. Kama Manas, Venus, and from stellar perspective, Ceres. Kama, Mars, Neptune, with some aspect of Venus. Prana, Sun, Mercury, and Uranus. Etheric body, Mercury, Uranus, Earth. Dense physical body, Moon, Mars, Saturn, Earth.
So you could see how you could spend forever considering what he said here. The reason I've included this is just to show you what a dense topic it is. It's not like, oh, there's 7 planets that represent the 7 levels and that's it, you know. And a lot of this relates to how these principles impact Earth's humanity, right? Um, as opposed to the pure energetic form of these planets on their own plane in relation to the sun. Then I think the list would be much simpler. You know. Anyway, um, you can see that it's not at all cut and dried. You know, the relationship of the planets to the solar logoic principles. And almost certainly the planets that represent these principles will change during the life of a solar logos. For example, Venus now represents the solar logoic heart center. But during the later stages of our solar logos' incarnation, as the planets begin to synthesize, well, Venus will be synthesized into Neptune. So it's almost certain that Neptune will represent this center at that later stage of solar logoic development. And there could be incremental shifts, you know, as I was describing in terms of the 3 globes of the Earth chain representing the root chakra of the solar logos. That kind of thing, I think, could change also during the life demonstration of the solar logos. Yes, Nadell.
And a number of places, DK wrote that there are divine qualities of which we have no knowledge and not even any inkling about. Could it be perhaps that when all the planets become sacred planets, then will be revealed qualities that we don't know about? We don't have enough sacred planet capacity at this time, so to speak, to manifest all those various qualities. Just something like that.
Yeah, this is a short answer. And the actual word for these what you call qualities are presented attributes, right? The Christ manifested through, you know, overshadowed Jesus. His main purpose was to ground or present the attribute of love, right? It made its way through that avatar into the lower quaternary. And we've been working to make it a recognized attribute ever since. The Buddha's presented attribute was wisdom, you know, which is why they are 2 halves of the second ray expression of love wisdom. They came relatively closely together. And it is also in process of being brought into a recognized attribute. Plato, his presented attribute was synthesis. The Gaia or Gaia concept of one Earth with all its interdependent parts, right, representing a singular consciousness. That was one of his main presented attributes. That's what he brought. But DK also mentions in this section, which is in Race and Initiations, I presented on it at last year's conference, that there are attributes, as you say, that we have no idea of. Not only that, that the beings who make up the offices, the hierarchy, the Manu, and the Lord of Civilization also have no idea of. So we tend to think, will, power, spirit, that's it. You know, that's the top of the line. There's really nothing beyond that. And in fact, it's just the highest of it, probably an endless stream of presented attributes, which we will eventually come into awareness of as um, the solar system's life unfolds, I would think that many more of these will be presented during the life of this intermediate solar system, this second ray solar system, which is, it's just, imagine that it's kind of like the frequency of visible light compared to, all the possible frequencies that exist, going up to ultra fast frequencies that are beyond visible. And, we have infrared, ultraviolet and infrared that represent the two bookends of visible light. But stretching beyond that, it just goes on and on and on. And you can see demonstrations of that. Well, just change that to the attributes that have been presented, and it's, I would think that it's there's a parallel there, that we're unaware of a whole vast realms of reality, Anyway, yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. So next, C, this follows on the solar logos, the heavenly men, or I should say the grand man of the heavens, the heavenly men, and then this is the third in this grouping, a human being, man. He manifests on the physical plane through form and has also 7 principles. In each life cycle, he works at their development. He likewise has his primary coloring, this is an important statement, dependent upon the fundamental principle embodied by the heavenly man, who is his originating source. So this is DK's third link in the chain after the solar logos and the heavenly man. A human being is the lowest reflection of the same septenary pattern. Just as the solar logos manifest through the solar system and a heavenly man through a planetary scheme, so humanity manifests through a physical form on the dense physical plane. Important here is the statement that the quality of coloring of the humanity of a given scheme, because, all the sacred planets at least have humanities, is derived from the planetary logos of that scheme. Here are the human principles as given by DK through which the monad expresses itself. Could we get a reader, please? Yeah, we can read this horizontally. Reader?
Yo.
Hi. We're going to look at principle, draw close emphasis on the nature and function. We begin with Atma, which is spiritual will, the highest principle in man, the monad's willless aspect expressing divine purpose. The second level, Buddha, intuition, love, wisdom, the principle of pure reason, inclusive love, and group consciousness. Third, manas, higher. This is the abstract mind, the principle of higher thought, the link between soul and spirit, part of the spiritual triad. Fourth level, manas, lower, the concrete mind, the analytical, form-building mind, the highest aspect of the personality. 5, kama, desire, astral, emotional principle, the principle of attraction, repulsion, motive, and sensitivity. 5, prana, vital body, the etheric, life principle, the energy body that vitalizes and coordinates the dense physical. 7, dense physical, the vehicle of action, the tangible body of matter, the lowest reflection of the monad.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so I want to backtrack to Nadel's question about what are principles. What I answered when he asked was they're a combination of the 7 rays and the matter of the 7 planes as created through the 7 Fohatic brothers, right? Which are just 7 forms of electrical energy that actually form each of the 7 planes. So you could say, but wait a minute, this seems like a different listing. But in fact, all of these, first of all, it relates strictly to a human being. So it doesn't, they have higher correspondences, but in terms of where the principles start, being at the atomic level and going down to the dense physical, is different than that for a solar logos, for instance, who starts at the Adi plane of the cosmic physical plane and goes down just into the Buddhic plane. And then you have the planetary consciousness that also penetrates into the top 3 subplanes of the mental plane, but not below that. In both cases, that cutoff line represents below the threshold of consciousness of the planetary and solar logoi. So you can't directly match them up because of that difference in where the consciousness is demonstrated. But the quality brought of the substance, which is created by one of the higher Fohatic brothers, is in line with and demonstrative of, you could say, is appropriate for the form aspect of the first ray, which is in turn appropriate for this highest principle in man, which is the monad's will aspect. I'm not going to go through them again, but you can see how you have in Buddha you have a demonstration of the second ray, love, wisdom, made of the substance of that particular Fohatic electrical energy, which, by the way, happens to be color, and creates the principle of pure reason, right? You could say it's amenable to, or provides the environment for, the principle of pure reason. So it's never a simple listing. You have key elements of the principle then being the rays, right? How they demonstrate through the forms created by Fohat, and how those interrelate to the principles of a human being. Okay? I hope that makes sense. I hope you don't feel like you knew before and like now you don't know. That would be worse. That'd be like anti-information. But sometimes you have to deconstruct before you can reconstruct. Okay. Any thoughts or questions about that or anything else? All right. Now we get to this little chart, kind of, almost like a tabulation. Can we get a reader, please?
And Veronica, you want to read? Okay. Dell.
The Logos, Father Spirit, Mother Matter, producing the Son or the Grand Man of the Heavens, the conscious logoic ego, evolving through the Sun, SUN, and the seven sacred planets, each embodying a cosmic principle in 6 differentiations by method of A, expansion, vibratory stimulation, magnetic interaction, or the law of attraction and repulsion. B, cyclic progress, rotary repetition, coupled to spiraling ascension and developing A, the quality of love wisdom through the utilization of form by the means of active intelligence. B, full self-consciousness. C, a perfected solar system or the form adequate to the needs of the indwelling spirit.
Thank you, Nadell. Okay, first, the Logos, Father Spirit, Mother Matter, producing the Son or the Grand Man of the Heavens, the conscious logoic ego. So, use of the term Father Spirit and Mother Matter condenses the many levels above the solar logos into one synthetic source, right? It's not articulated. It's he chooses to synthesize all those levels above into just simply saying Father Spirit, Mother Matter, right? Into one synthetic source for all creation, which comes about when the Absolute, who contains both of these principles, projects them into manifestation as the universal first and second logoi. This would literally be at a universal, including the whole universe, the first and second logoi of the entire universe. And from these two universal logoi, myriads of levels extend. We were talking about that before, extend deeper and deeper into materiality until finally a solar logos is produced. Like there's actually like us. Well, anyway, who is in essence the Son of Spirit and Matter, hence the relation, right? Science has estimated that there are 1 septillion stars. Each of them, we must assume, a solar logos, right? That's a septillion is 1 times 10 to the 24th power, which is, ready for this, 100,000 times greater than the estimated number of grains of sand on the earth. That includes the sand at the bottom of the sea, right? So a lot of stars. Okay, next, this Son or Grand Man of the Heavens evolving through the Sun, SUN, and the 7 sacred planets, each embodying a cosmic principle in 6 differentiations. So why not 7 differentiations? Why 6? The answer is that one of those is the fundamental principle. That's not a differentiation, right? So the 6 are the differentiations of that fundamental principle. So just as human being evolves through its 7 centers, the solar logos evolves through its planetary centers, which each embody a fundamental quality of divine life. For example, Venus embodies the principle of mind and love wisdom, called the intelligence of the heart. The 6 differentiations expressed through 6 of the 7 planetary chains found in a planetary scheme, as well as through 6 of the 7 globes in every 7-fold chain, for there is a vibrational alignment between the globes and chains bearing the same name, right? So the fundamental here is described through the fourth earth chain and the fourth earth globe of that earth chain. And then you have the other 6 that represent aspects of or differentiations of that fundamental principle, which is itself in its entirety a differentiation from the solar logoic ray of love wisdom. Any thoughts or questions? Okay. By a method of, let's catch Barbara before we go on. Yes, Barbara.
Yes. So in the secret doctrine and in the dialogues, the absolute radiates a ray. Just through its own vibration and aliveness, not necessarily with the intent of projecting spirit and matter. So, and from that then comes the 7th rays. So this sounds more like the Kabbalistic system of an Ein Sof that produces spirit and matter. But so I'm just wondering about the
Ontology.
yes.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky. The best thing is to read the first stanza, the stanzas of Zond, which is mostly, or even up through the middle of the 3rd stanza, which is all about that initial phase, right? And it's full of this had not yet happened. There's very little direct information in all of that because nothing of that level can be cognized by human brains. But what we are told is that the absolute has only one attribute, which is eternal motion, right?
Yes.
Because nothing that is spiritual is not in motion, and that, as you say, the one ray goes forth, but this isn't to be confused with one of the 7 rays. This is just descriptive of, I think, of an intention of the absolute, and it's that intention that holds the entire manifested universe, right, in its intention. But it's not itself the even the blueprint of the universe. That comes later. It's just the pure intention, right? That goes forth and divides into duality. And I used to represent this when I was, I think we're in like the 8th year of the Secret Doctrine when I was starting this out, trying to get a sense of how this might look, was using the Vesica Pisces as that the one circle of the Vesica Pisces represents the absolute, and it mirrors itself, and there are words that's effect in the proem of the Secret Doctrine, into manifestation. But it's a downward mirroring, and in that new chaos of first and second logos eventually come into being. That's the process that's described in those first 2.5 stanzas, right? Eventually, the combination of those two logoi comes through Fohat, light is produced, and you have the intersection of the two great circles, which is sometimes called the mandorla, the vesica piscis. In Chartres Cathedral, it's the shape that the Christ emerges from over the main doors of the cathedral. So, proving what an esoteric orientation those Masons had that created that. But there is no way of giving the same kind of ontology that we can in our local universe, even up to the one about whom not may be said, because we just simply have no reference points at that high level. And the only thing we have is the poetry of those earliest stanzas. Also, the first stanzas of Dawn and the Secret Doctrine, even though the first stanza itself, I think is related. It's very short. Is related to those first 2.5 stanzas in the Secret Doctrine that describe the nature of the absolute. But it's not until manifestation actually starts occurring that there's really anything to talk about, which is why those early stanzas mostly talk about what isn't yet, Yes, do you still have your hand up, Barbara? Does that answer your question? Do you have any? I mean, it can't possibly answer your question because it's an unanswerable question, but I don't know if it sheds any light or not. I see Joe, you have your hand up?
Yes. I just wanted to, I guess, apply Ray 7 to the issue intent. It's hard to speak about it, but I knew when I was 8 years old what my intent was. It had been given to me, I felt. And having an intent, even if you don't know where it's going to resolve itself, or you don't know yet that it's going to try many different approaches to figure out what is my real intent, still there is intent. And what a difference that makes in terms of how you see people living out their lives.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it exists independent of what you intend with your intention. In other words, one can be full of the spirit of intent and just in their incarnation, and there will be a very fruitful incarnation, right? It's not so much I intend to do A, B, or C. That said, what we're talking about here is mental intent that has to do with the lower quaternary. The kind of intention we're talking about here is, every word that you use, you have to put an apology and a question mark beside it because it has nothing to do with these ultra, not just super, but ultra cosmic levels of motive force, but because we are, shackled, hampered by the English language at all, but especially English, we have to bring it down into words that at least dimly reflect what's meant, Anybody else? Okay, next. Let's see. The sun and 7 sacred planets, each embodying a cosmic principle and 6 differentiations. So what by method of is referencing is in 6 differentiations by method of expansion, vibratory stimulation, magnetic interaction, or the law of attraction and repulsion. Okay, so each of the 6 differentiations, which you could call expressions of the subray of the fundamental ray of a sacred planet, um, uh, which is expressed through the chains and globes of the same name of a given sacred planet on the 6 systemic planes, demonstrate its quality by 1, a particular ray method of expansion, representing the growth of consciousness through successive cycles. That's the kind of expansion that's being talked about here. 2, a particular ray method of vibratory stimulation, which raises the vibratory rate of forms so that they may respond to the higher principles. You can see the interrelation between expansion and vibratory rate, right? You could say that growth, the expansion of consciousness happens through vibratory stimulation, right? And 3, a particular ray method of magnetic interaction, or the quality of attraction or repulsion, representing the interplay of centers within the body of the logos. This isn't ABC. I mean, this isn't cause and effect. There are 3 concurrent methods that happen, expansion, vibratory stimulation, and magnetic interrelation all creates this process of becoming that creates the 6 differentiations. Okay, it's the method of the creation of these 6 differentiations. Yeah. Next, B, cyclic progress, rotary repetition coupled to spiraling ascension. Okay, another list. First, cyclic progress. All evolution evolves through cycles of manifestation and withdrawal, or manvantaras and pralayas. Thus, progress is not linear, but periodic, circular, cyclical, taking place through cyclic appearance, growth, obscuration, rest, reemergence, right? Rotary repetition means that each cycle repeats the same basic motions, but gradually builds an increased rhythm and stability, thus enabling responsiveness to spiralic ascension, wherein each rotary repetition is carried out on a higher and higher turn of the spiral. All right, so yeah. Next. And developing the quality of love wisdom through the utilization of form by the means of active intelligence. So Logos employs form, whether chains, globes, kingdoms of nature, whatever, human vehicles, as the field of experience wherein relationships arise, the dualities emerge, right? And through which the quality of love is then tested, expanded, and refined. And he does this by means of the organizing power of active intelligence. That's the method by which he works with the pairs of opposites that rise up. By the way, that's a very Mercury-oriented quality. That provides the energy for this relational active intelligence. Next, and developing B, full self-consciousness, and C, a perfected solar system or the form adequate to the needs of the indwelling spirit. Okay, so full self-consciousness means gaining complete awareness of oneself as a conscious ego, just as it does for human. We're talking still on planetary levels, so complete awareness of himself as a conscious ego at planetary levels, just as it does for a human being, which leads to a, quote, perfected solar system or the form adequate to the needs of the indwelling spirit. The form side of the logos, the physical solar system, must be brought to perfection so that it can fully express the indwelling spirit. This means that the 7 sacred planets, in their role as centers of the logos, as principles, as demonstrating principles of the logos, must become fully vitalized and coordinated. At the same time, the systemic planes also become responsive to higher energies, and the 5 kingdoms of nature are unfolded to their highest potential. When the solar system is thereby perfected, it becomes a fit instrument for the SON, Sun, to express his full consciousness and purpose. There's no longer any barriers, no impediments to this demonstration of pure planetary or logoic, solar logoic consciousness, right? Very much like the perfected personality becomes a fit vehicle for the SON Sun or soul to express his full consciousness and purpose. Direct analogy here helps us to understand these higher levels. Nadell.
Do you think when it says cyclic progress, rotary repetition coupled to spiraling ascension, is that referring to the rounds?
Yes, if you're going to look for a definite application in relationship to the planetary logoi, that's where you would look, right? But it's also a general statement about all the little cycles that occur within all the kingdoms in nature, life and death, rebirth, which make up the greater cycles. Ultimately, those cycles are the rounds of a given chain, right? 7 times through the 7 planets, right? Which I think, I'm actually really glad you said that, because it's precisely the method by which a planetary logos demonstrates the particular quality that chain represents. Remember, there's 6 differentiations and then the 1 fundamental. So you could say that those 7 rounds are the method by which that particular aspect of the fundamental ray is finally realized by the planetary logos. Thanks for that. I hadn't thought in that way. I was thinking in the general terms, but it absolutely applies at planetary levels. Yeah. And finally, let's see. Yeah, get that. Right. Alrighty then, next up, can we get a reader, please?
Nisa. Tom, you want to read?
Yep.
Go ahead, Tom.
Similar. Ooh.
Go ahead. We're not hearing you yet.
Here a similar tabulation may be worded out to demonstrate the similarity of the process in the case of a heavenly man and a human being. If we ask why 10 schemes and in effect 10 planets, 7 sacred and 3 concealed, it is because the 7 sacred planets are eventually merged into the 3, and finally the 3 are blended into the 1. This can be traced along the line of analogy as we consider the 7 rays. These 7 rays, which in manifestation are diverse, are eventually synthesized. The minor 4 are blended, we are told, into the 3rd major ray, and the 3 major rays are finally merged into the one synthetic ray, the love wisdom ray, the dragon of wisdom, the occult serpent swallowing its tail. This has been pointed out by HPV, and we have therefore the 3 crowning rays, but 7 is seen during the evolutionary process.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. First, here, a similar tabulation may be worked out to demonstrate the similarity of the process in the case of a heavenly man and a human being. See how he's just pounding these relationships. If there's an overarching method, it's the as above, so below paradigm. This septenary system is universal and even down to a certain extent to the details, at least in the abstract, of how these evolution unfolds, right, at every level. Okay, so could we get a reader for each column? But let's read these vertically, okay? This demonstrates how the relationship between a heavenly man and a human being, but I've also added the solar logos here so we get all 3. Reader, please.
Barbara, you want to read again?
Yes. So horizontally or vertically?
Vertically.
Okay. Solar logos, macrocosm, evolves through the sun and 7 sacred planets, his centers. Every sacred planet embodies a cosmic principle.
You know what, Barbara? I just changed my mind because the point here is to just demonstrate the similarity in process. So I think if we do a horizontal reading, we'll get more of a sense of what each level looks like at each of the 3 systems. So let's do it horizontally. Just start with evolves through the sun.
Okay. Solar logos, macrocosm, heavenly man, planetary logos, human being, microcosm. Solar logos evolves through the sun and 7 sacred planets, his centers. Heavenly man evolves through a planetary scheme, change, globes, and rounds. Human being evolves through incarnations and successive personalities. Each sacred planet embodies a cosmic principle. Each chain or globe embodies a ray quality or principle. Each vehicle, mental, astral, physical, embodies a principle of consciousness. Principles expressed in 6 differentiations, 6 planes of systemic manifestation. Principles expressed in 7 chains and globes, 6 active at a time. Principles expressed in 6 planes of human experience, physical to atmic. Methods, expansions, vibratory stimulation, magnetic, interaction, attraction, repulsion. Methods, cyclic rounds, stimulation of kingdoms, magnetic interplay of globes. Methods, growth of consciousness, raising vibration, relationships, karma. Goal, love, wisdom, perfected, full self-consciousness of the logos, a perfected solar system. Goal, love, wisdom, perfected, full self-consciousness of the planetary logos, a perfected planetary scheme. Goal, love, wisdom, perfected. Full self-consciousness of the soul, a perfected personality. Result, grand man of the heavens, fully conscious. Result, heavenly man perfected, planetary initiation. Result, initiated disciple, master.
Thank you, Barbara. You know, you could dwell at length on any one of these. We just did on the method of a solar logos, you know, through expansion, vibratory stimulation, and the methods of a heavenly man, right? So this is a just a thumbnail of topics that run quite deep. Okay, next. If we ask why 10 schemes, and in effect 10 planets, 7 sacred and 3 concealed, it is because the 7 sacred planets are eventually emerging into the 3. And finally, the 3 are blended into the 1. Okay, so the 3 synthesizing planets are Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, right? You can see them here. And the final 1 synthesizing planet is Uranus, which then merges with the sun as shown in this chart. The idea of 10 schemes suggests that the qualities of Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn as synthesizing planets changes them to such an extent that they need to be added to and thus distinguished from the Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn that form part of the 7 sacred planets. You see what I mean? That they literally become so different in their nature that they have to be tabulated as separate planets, thus giving us 10 planets. Also, 10 is the number of completion. It reduces to 1. So you have the 1 and its 9 components. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Mesa.
Yes, thank you. The 4 schemes which form the logoic quaternary will merge into their synthesizing scheme, that of Saturn, while Venus and Mercury will merge into Uranus and Neptune. No importance need be attached to the sequence of these names. The dual fact is all that is necessary to grasp. Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn will, therefore, have absorbed the essence of manifestation, and in connection with the solar logos, they correspond to the 3 permanent atoms in the causal body of a man. We say correspond, for the analogy is not in detail. Uranus and Neptune are reflections of the logoic astral and mental permanent atoms. Saturn is, in fact, the correspondence to the logoic physical permanent atom. This is an occult mystery and must not be separated from its allied truth in the cosmic scheme.
Thank you, Nisa. Thoughts or questions? This final planetary synthesis at the end of the solar logoic incarnation mirrors the process in a human being where 7 chakras merge into 3 major centers, head, heart, and throat, which then merge into 1 unified field of consciousness that escapes the lower quaternary and resituates on the Buddhic plane. We can assume that a similar thing happens among solar logos. They also escape the cosmic physical plane altogether through this process. And that is all the time we have today. Thanks very much for attending.